Ah, good old Ignis. He can be kind of a joke character sometimes with his mom behavior and recipes, but at his core, he's just a good guy. Just a good guy. And not much else, really. Look, I'm sorry, but Ignis has never been that interesting to me. I never saw much development or variety in his character. I think there are more interesting sides to Ignis's character, but the game never really shows them off, and so he becomes kind of one note for me. Now, that's a controversial place for me to start, and I'm not saying it's wrong for you to like Ignis. I think he's a likable character, just not a very in-depth one. But hey, this episode of Brotherhood is all about Ignis, so maybe it changed my perspective a bit? It did, but admittedly not in any major way. The episode opens up with the guys riding in the car. But Noctis and Prompto are tired and don't want to have to camp again, so Ignis takes them back to Lestalem to take a day off. Noctis and Prompto go hang out while Ignis stops by the market to pick up some ingredients. He takes them back to a hotel where he begins baking a new treat, and it triggers a flashback. Ignis bakes some dessert in the castle kitchen and takes it to someone's apartment. Oh my goodness, how can one human produce this much trash? No time to question it though, cause now we're following high school Noctis and Prompto. They talk about school and it seems they finally bonded with each other. Noctis returns to the apartment. Why am I not surprised he caused this mess? Ignis gives Noctis a good old mom lecture and serves the prince his latest dessert. Ignis then goes to leave, but makes sure to warn Noctis that if he doesn't start acting more responsible, he won't be allowed to live on his own anymore. He hands the political report off to the prince before leaving. The next morning, Noctis is eating Ignis's dessert at school when Prompto asks what it is. Noctis explains that when he was young, he went to a restaurant in Tenebrae and had a really good pastry that he's been wanting to eat again, but he can't remember what it was. Ignis has been trying to recreate the dessert for him ever since. After their little interaction, we cut to a meeting between Lucis's leaders that I don't really understand because I didn't watch that anime movie that came out before the game. Ignis takes notes during the meeting to give to Noctis later that day. King Regis asks Ignis how Noctis is doing, and he politely expresses his concerns for Nox's irresponsibility. Ignis then asks Regis how he's holding up. Apparently, in order to keep the wall that surrounds Lucis up and running, Regis has to sacrifice his strength or something like that. Regis warns Ignis that his time may be up soon, and that if he dies, Noctis will be in Ignis's care. Ignis accepts, and we see him later sewing up Nox's uniform for him like he promised. Noctis and Prompto are walking home from school one day when Noctis sees a report of his father on TV, and is shocked by how weak Regis has become. But like, why didn't Noctis know this about his dad before now? Don't they text or something? Again, it seems like they're not really solving this father-son disconnect issue, but anyway. Noctis comes home already in a bad mood when Ignis scolds him for not following through with his responsibilities. Noctis has an outburst, worried about his dad's death approaching and having to become the king. Ignis tells him he needs to start accepting his role as successor to the throne before walking out, and immediately feeling bad about what he said. The next day, Noctis and Prompto are hanging out at the arcade when Gladio approaches them. Gladio takes Noct back to his house for some training, but like in the last episode, Noctis can't hold his ground and gives up. Gladio tells him he needs to shape up if he's going to be king, and Noct admits he knows he needs to improve. He's just not sure if he can. We then see Ignis is also hard at work sharpening his battling skills. He runs into Gladio, who tells him to make sure Noctis comes to his combat training. Ignis talks to Gladio about Noct's immaturity when Gladio tells him to give the prince a chance. Sure enough, when Ignis visits Noctis the next night, he's already started cooking for himself, going through his political reports, and even getting better at his schoolwork. This time, Ignis dropped the ball and didn't bring anything for dinner. So instead, they indulge in some good old cup noodles.
The ultimate flavor experience.
Back in present day, Noctis and Prompto return from a day out on the town to find Ignis has cooked up some more of Noct's favorite dessert. Sadly, it still doesn't seem to be up to Noctis's taste. Or so he says! I think he just wants free dessert. And now we come back to my hot take on Ignis. Episode 4 doesn't really do a good job of making Ignis shine. He pretty much stays the same throughout. Refined, responsible, and Nox's guide. The only real change is that he becomes a little less strict towards the prince. Although he never was that strict to Noctis in the first place, baking him countless desserts just out of the goodness of his heart and all. And that's my problem with Ignis. He's too good. He doesn't have any real flaws besides being a bit of a stone face. Even when he literally has his face mangled after going through a traumatic near-death experience, he's still the one to calm down the group and stop their petty bro fight. Ironically enough, Ignis' Brotherhood episode did the most service to Noctis in my opinion. It gave him some more depth beyond being a moody teenager. I think a lot of the problems people have with Noct, myself included, is that he's too selfish and whiny and doesn't know how to just suck it up. But this episode showed us that Noctis knows how big his responsibilities are. He knows what his role means for his future, and it's scary scares him. Noctis can be self-centered and irresponsible sometimes, but in the end, he's just a scared little kid who doesn't want to let everyone down. And we see this side of him when he trains with Gladio. He pouts and gives up when he can't win, just like he did when he was young. But Noctis keeps working to move past his fear. He cooks himself food, he works harder at school, and he analyzes his political reports. He messes up along the way, but with the support of his friends, he keeps moving forward. Now, wasn't that inspirational? If only we didn't learn that in an episode that was made to explore Ignis's character. At first, I felt like Prompto was a bit of a basic sidekick character, but now I feel like Ignis is the one who's second to Noct, and it really hurts him as a character. We get glimpses of Ignis having a more interesting side. He struggles with caring for Noctis. He wants to see the prince succeed, but he doesn't know how to get him there. Sadly, this development isn't really explored, and Noct steals the show. My main question is why? Why is Ignis so devoted to Noctis? Why does he take his job so seriously? Why did he sign up for his job in the first place? The other guys have pretty clear motivations for being nice to Noct. Gladio earned respect for him as he matured, and Prompto just wanted someone to connect with. So why is Ignis the way he is? He's just a nice guy? I'm sorry, but that's a little boring to me. I'm reading over this and worrying that I'm gonna come off as really harsh. So let me try and wrap up what I'm trying to say. Overall, episode 4 feels kind of like episode 3, but not as good. Episode 3 really nailed that enemies to friends arc between Gladio and Noctis. At the beginning, both of their opposition towards each other feels real. Both of them are equally to blame for their conflict as well, with Noctis being lazy and wanting to goof off, and Gladio being too strict and unforgiving towards him. It takes time and effort for them to move past these faults. We even get to see the effects of their reconnecting in episode 4. This time, when Noctis gets upset during training, Gladio doesn't yell at him to man up, but instead tries to understand him, while still not letting him off easy. Episode 4 just isn't able to accomplish what episode 3 did. You don't really feel like Ignis does anything wrong. Yeah, he steps out of line by snapping at Noctis when he needs help, but I'd be pretty frustrated too if I picked up someone's slack for them and they still complain. Ignis does change in this episode by learning he needs to be more forgiving towards Noct, and oh wait, doesn't that sound familiar? The only problem is, Ignis's transformation is much weaker than Gladio's. All it really takes is a nudge from Gladio and Noctis cleaning up his act for him to be slightly more open around Noct. I think by now I've talked enough. Ignis isn't a lost cause, and episode 4 did help me see more of his motivation and struggle as a character, but he could use more depth instead of having his entire character based on Noctis. Besides some of the Ignis difficulties, this episode was pretty good. The technical aspects like the animation and writing were on par with the other episodes, and it gave us some great character growth for Noctis. Hopefully Ignis will get to see some more of that growth too. Thank you all for watching. Make sure to like this video if you enjoyed it. I have reviews of the other Brotherhood episodes on my channel, so be sure to check those out. Subscribe so you'll know when my episode 5 review comes out. And I'll see you all next time. Bye!